Sinead Milabuikas, Concordia. Concordia, we are faced with an absolutely unprecedented crisis in terms of health, social, economic, political and psychological well-being of this country. And Budget 2021 has been announced as the ECB forecast points to the sharpest ever decline in EU GDP, 10% in 2020, with an unprecedented job losses and unprecedented damage to society and enterprises. It's nearly impossible to find the words that grasp the full extent of the crisis that this country is in. And never has there been so many uncertainties either. Ireland is uniquely vulnerable in the short term. The potential for a second wave of COVID and the immediacy of Brexit put us in a terrible position. So you would imagine it is a time for a massively bold initiative that would have been unthinkable before. Aontú's principal goals for the 2021 budget were to protect life and health, to protect the personally and economically vulnerable, to promote and safeguard employment, and to scale up key public services to meet the onslaughts and the demands triggered by this crisis. Now, this government was in a very strange place. Indeed, just listening to the previous debate there, we heard from, I think it was the Socialist Party, saying who's going to pay for this? It's the first time I think I've heard them use that term before in such a particular debate. But this government knew that they were in a different situation as well. They knew that the rules didn't apply to them on this particular occasion. They had the opportunity to actually tackle this COVID and Brexit in an enormous way. Never before have the fiscal hawks in society been aligned so much in favour of actually spending. We had an opportunity that probably the state will never see again. And this opportunity was, yes, to tackle Brexit and to tackle COVID, but one also to reset our society for a massive public investment in society. A serious crisis can be a serious catalyst for great change. Now, first of all, Aontú is a socially responsible political movement. We wanted to see this budget tackle the issues of health, housing, transport, regional development and justice. But we're also a fiscally responsible movement. We want to see citizens' money spent properly and efficiently. A deficit simply means taking the money from the future to invest in today. So it's key to whatever investment that we make that tomorrow also benefits from the investments that we make. So how did the government do with regards its first budget? Well, I tell you, I heard many words up until now saying that low-paid individuals and younger people were amongst those who are greatest damaged by this particular crisis. But if you look at what's happened to low-income families, they've received very, very little. If you're a pensioner, or you're on the PUP, or a family renting a home, or you're an under-pressure mortgage holder, or you have children in childcare, if you're a farmer, or you live in regional or rural Ireland, move along. Budget 2021 is not for you. And I'm amazed that in 18 billion euros of budget increase, the government couldn't find a tenner for pensioners in this country. Pensioners are the most vulnerable and the most exposed to the COVID crisis. And at a time of serious crisis for pensioners and an 18 billion euro investment, this government could not find a tenner for pensioners. Changes to sick pay, while obviously an improvement, still leave Ireland as an outlier in European terms. And again, the pandemic unemployment payment remained untouched after its dramatic cut. If you were ever to look for a totem of a two-tiered country, you would see it in the fact that this government reduced the income of those on 18,000 euros and increased the income of those on 80,000 euros, the opposite to what it should be done. So this particular budget was also an opportunity for massive investment in our infrastructure. And God knows that Ireland's infrastructure is in rag order. We've had more infrastructural depreciation probably than any other nation in Europe over the last 15 years due to the lack of investment that we had. Indeed, Ireland was second from the bottom in infrastructural spend for a decade. Only Romania beat us to that position of being on the bottom. So this particular budget, out of 18 billion euros, sees us an investment of 750 million euros. That's incredible. With that investment, we're still going to be under 3% of GDP investment, way lower than where we should be, way lower to get what we need done in this country. And this is a mistake. Ireland needs a Keynesian counter-cyclical investment for sure, and it needs to do it in terms of efficiencies. And the efficiencies are obvious. If you build houses for our citizens today, the government, the state, gets rent in the future. If you end Dublin's shocking record of being one of the most congested cities in Europe, it allows for investment and business to happen in the future. And we need a balanced Ireland. Right now, we have an overheating capital. A third of the country is literally a commuter belt into Dublin, and many parts of regional and rural Ireland are emptying of their young people. And I've heard talk about a circuit breaker, but why not a circuit breaker to the lopsided city-state development that's happening in our island at the moment? Yes, there's a few bob here and there for rural schemes in this particular budget. But that money, those types of schemes, in reality, are like social welfare for rural Ireland. Yes, they're enough to keep rural Ireland ticking over, but they're never enough for a systematic change. Enough for survival, but not enough for vibrant regional balance. Now, we've also seen the reheating of previously announced broadband funding, and we've seen €10 million of remote working hub investment. €10 million at Ceann Comhairle for what was to be one of the big headline articles for the redevelopment of rural Ireland, to allow people to work at home safely and not having to commute 2 or 3 hours a day. Housing, again, a real letdown for me. In 2016, at Ceann Comhairle, you'll remember that the Housing Committee said that we need to have 10,000 houses built a year in this country. A year. After this budget, after the €18 billion headline figure, the government's ambition is still less than that 2016 number. Indeed, if you take out reheated housing figures from this budget, we're talking about 600 extra real social housing homes compared to the original 2021 targets. No efforts to reposition the economy with regards to the vulture funds in which the UN themselves said had a skewed market towards them. And no efforts to reconfigure the vacant site tax that brought in how much last year? €800,000. That's all it managed to bring in last year. Now, I'm amazed with regards to what's happened in the North-South, because Brexit and COVID highlights in flashing neon lights the importance of a seamless North-South cooperation. And resistance to that All-Ireland cooperation cost lives. And I've listened to the government actually articulate that view in recent times. But yet, there is nothing in this budget which talks about funding together, planning together and delivering together. Yes, there is extra money for North-South projects, and I welcome that. But if the two parts of the island continue to do business with their backs to each other, we're still going to be looking at the damage of Brexit and COVID in front of us as well. Just with regards to strategy, I have to say that there's no change in government strategy in this budget. The government's strategy with regards to COVID is a yo-yo strategy, in and out of restrictions and lockdowns, one that's radically going to reduce the ability of this country to function. And it's based on let's see what happens in the next 14 days. That has to stop. We should have had in this budget a COVID-19 impact commission to study exactly the outcomes of the restrictions in this country. That's all I have time for, unfortunately, other than to say that the €4 billion going into health is simply going to allow us to keep up where we were, because capacity has been gutted massively in the last while. Gar míle mágat, Ceann Comhairle.